Your sister needs a perfect wedding, Dad texted. We're using your university fee. I read it twice, not because I didn't understand, but because I wanted to feel exactly how it landed. The cafe around me blurred into a low hum, cups clinking, someone laughing too loudly, an espresso machine hissing like a warning I'd learned to ignore years ago. My thumb hovered over the screen while the message settled into something colder than anger. It wasn't the money. It was the assumption. They still thought I was the same obedient son who quietly sacrificed, who nodded and agreed, who made himself smaller so others could shine brighter. I glanced at the email open beneath his text. Payment confirmation required. Venue reservation pending. My sister's dream wedding. My future, apparently negotiable. I typed slowly, deliberately. I want her to be happy too. Then I hit send, leaned back, and let a faint smile touch my lips. Not warm, not bitter, just precise. Because what Dad didn't know, what he had never bothered to ask, was that I had already graduated from Harvard Medical School, debt-free, quietly, years ahead of his expectations, and the university fund he thought he controlled. It hadn't been mine for a long time. I've always been the quiet one in the family, the reliable son, the invisible pillar, not ignored exactly, just expected. Expected to understand, to adjust, to give. My sister Aisha was the opposite. Bright, loud, celebrated. Every achievement of hers was a family event. Every sacrifice of mine was normal. That was the balance we never questioned. Growing up, I learned early that love in our house wasn't loud. It was conditional, measured in how useful you could be. I didn't resent it. Not then. I just adapted. When I got into medical school, Dad called it a good investment. When I started working on software patents during sleepless nights, he called it a distraction. He never asked why money quietly started appearing in my account, or how my tuition bills stopped arriving at home. He assumed control without checking reality. That was his pattern. And mine, I let him. I let them all believe I was still dependent, still catching up, still needing permission. Because correcting them would have meant explaining myself, and I learned a long time ago that explanations are rarely heard by people who've already decided your role in their story. So I stayed quiet, not weak, just patient. The next few days unfolded exactly the way I expected. Quietly, confidently, without me. No one called to ask. No one checked if I agreed. Decisions were made in group chats I wasn't part of, then forwarded to me like summaries of a meeting I hadn't attended. Your sister picked the ivory theme, Mom said over a brief call. Her tone light, distracted. In the background, I could hear laughter. Relatives, maybe. It's expensive, but it's her day. I murmured something agreeable. She didn't notice the pause before I spoke. Later, Dad sent me a screenshot of the venue invoice. No greeting, no explanation, just a number at the bottom and a short line. Handle this today. Handle this, as if I were an extension of his will, not a person with one of my own. At dinner that weekend, I watched them from across the table. My sister scrolling through floral designs, her excitement spilling into every sentence. Dad nodding, proud. Mom adjusting details, already hosting the future in her mind. No one asked how I was. No one asked if I could. At one point, Aisha glanced up, smiled briefly. You'll take care of it, right? Her voice was soft, certain. Not demanding, just sure. That was the part that stayed with me, not the request. The certainty. The call from the venue came the next morning. Her voice was polite, professional, carefully neutral. We're just following up on the pending payment. We were told it would be processed by today. I stepped outside before answering, letting the door close softly behind me. The street was quiet. The kind of quiet that makes every thought sound louder than it should. Yes, I said calm. I'm aware. There was a pause on the line. Expectation, waiting to be confirmed. I looked at the glass reflection in front of me. Myself, steady, composed, and finally honest. For now, I added, please hold the reservation. Another pause. Longer this time. Then, of course, sir. When the call ended, I didn't move right away. I just stood there, feeling something settle into place. Not anger, not even hurt. Clarity. For years, I'd mistaken silence for peace, compliance for kindness. I thought endurance was the same as loyalty. It wasn't. They hadn't asked because they didn't think they needed to. And I had allowed that belief to exist, untouched. That was the moment it shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a quiet decision made without witnesses. I wouldn't argue, I wouldn't explain. I would simply Stop playing the role they had written for me. I didn't rush. That was the difference between reaction and strategy. First, I reviewed everything. Old emails, bank statements. The original education fund account Dad believed still existed. It had been converted years ago, quietly, into a holding structure under my name. Legal, clean, untouchable without my authorization. I double-checked the venue contract next. Cancellation clauses, payment deadlines, refund windows. Not to sabotage, just to understand leverage. There's power in knowing exactly when something becomes irreversible. Then I made a few calls. Not emotional ones, professional ones. The venue manager confirmed what I expected. No deposit, no reservation. Simple, no drama. Just policy. After that, I reached out to a colleague, someone who specialized in event logistics. Within an hour, I had a list of alternative venues at different price points. Each one available, each one requiring direct client confirmation. Options. That's all I was creating. I didn't block anything. I didn't interfere. I simply stepped back from the position they had placed me in. Financial executor, silent provider, and returned responsibility to where it belonged. Finally, I drafted a single message to Dad. Clear, brief, unemotional. Not a refusal. Just a boundary written in terms he would understand. And then I waited. Dad called that evening. Not immediately after my message, but soon enough to show he'd read it more than once. I let it ring twice before answering. "What do you mean the payment isn't processed?" he asked, voice controlled, but thinner than usual. Not angry yet, just unsettled. I leaned against the window, watching the last light fade from the street below. "It means exactly that," I said, calm, even. A pause, papers shifting on his end. "They said the reservation is on hold." "Yes." Another pause, longer this time. I could almost see him recalculating, trying to find the version of me that would fix this without question. "She's already told people about that venue," he said finally. "Invitations are being planned." "I understand." Silence stretched between us, heavy but not hostile, just unfamiliar. "So what are you saying?" he asked. I exhaled softly, not out of frustration but finality. "I'm saying the arrangements should be handled by the people, making the decisions. No accusation, no raised voice, just truth, placed carefully where it couldn't be ignored." The next day, the venue released the date. By evening, the group chat lit up. Confusion first, then urgency, then a quiet shift in tone I hadn't heard before. For the first time, they weren't informing me. They were asking. The shift didn't come with an apology. It came with hesitation. Mum called first, her voice softer than usual, careful around the edges. "We didn't realize the payment wasn't automatic." A pause followed, as if she was waiting for me to fill it, to reassure her, to step back into place. I didn't. "I assumed you'd let us know," she added, quieter now. "I did," I said, not unkindly. That was the end of it. No argument, just a silence that carried more weight than anything we could have said. Aisha messaged later that night. No emojis this time. No easy certainty. "Can we talk about options?" Options, not expectations. Dad didn't call again that day, but in the group chat, his tone had changed. Shorter messages, more questions, less instruction. He was recalibrating, whether he admitted it or not. Nothing exploded. No dramatic fallout. Just small, undeniable adjustments in how they approached me, and how they saw me. For the first time, my absence from their plans had consequences they couldn't smooth over. And maybe that's why it mattered, because this wasn't about a wedding, or money, or a missed deadline. It was about something quieter, but far more permanent. The moment people realize you were never obligated to carry what they placed on you, and that you've finally chosen not to. In the weeks that followed, nothing returned to the way it was. And that was the point. Conversations became slower, more deliberate. Plans included pauses where my opinion was actually considered, not assumed. It wasn't perfect. Old habits don't disappear overnight. But the shift was real, subtle but undeniable. Aisha chose a different venue in the end. Smaller, simpler, but hers. I helped when she asked, not when it was expected. And strangely, that made every contribution feel lighter. Honest. Dad never brought up the university fund again, not because he forgot, but because he finally understood it was never his to decide. As for me, I stopped measuring my worth by how much I could carry for others. I didn't withdraw. I didn't distance myself. I just redefined the terms. There's a quiet kind of power in that. No announcements, no confrontation, just a steady refusal to be misplaced in someone else's expectations. I still show up. I still care. But now it's a choice, not a role. And maybe that's what freedom really looks like. Not walking away from the table, but finally deciding where you sit.